I attended university in Canada. I watched a movie yesterday. I walked home after school. I tried Korean food for the first time last week. One of the most common challenges students face when trying to improve their grammatical or pronunciation accuracy is the regular past tense. I attended. I watched. I lived. That one little sound at the end of a verb can make or break your English test score. Let's take a closer look. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Everyday English with E2. My name is Mark. Each week we focus on English grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, or spelling, and this week it's all about pronunciation. But before we get going and learn all about the pronunciation of regular past simple verbs, remember that you can check out www.e2testprep.com for test preparation courses for IELTS, PTE, OET, TOEFL, TOEIC, and CELPIP. Pass your test sooner with E2. Now, to refresh your memory about the past simple, this is the verb tense we use when talking about a complete action in the past. Now, to avoid upsetting the grammar purists, yes, we know that sometimes the past simple can be used in other situations, and even to talk about the future. But for the majority of the time, when we use the past simple, we use it to talk about finished actions in the past. Yesterday, I walked home from work. On Saturday, I called my parents. Or many years ago, I lived in Japan. All finished. But in my experiences, in all classes, whether IELTS preparation, TOEFL, business English, and all levels of general English, even some advanced level students, still miss this one key point of pronunciation. When I was an IELTS examiner, sometimes students who had been living in an English-speaking country for 3 years would not get this sound. Now, to be clear, if you don't always make this sound, it's not a big deal. People will still understand you. But I suspect many of you want to be as precise as possible. So, let's get to work. So, we're going to ignore the irregular verbs. Went, was, thought, saw. We'll ignore those today. The regular past simple is just the base form of the verb with an ed at the end. Watch becomes watched. Move becomes moved. Want becomes wanted. You get the idea. But if there is one thing students often need help with, it's making sure that when it matters, they get this right. Now, if you said, yesterday I walk home, that's fine. I understand what you're saying. I understand what you mean. But if your goal is not just to be clear, but to be precise when speaking, we have to do just a little bit better. There are 3 types of pronunciation for regular past simple verbs. Starting with d. When we have a voiced consonant or vowel sound, we use d. Now, don't worry about remembering this, but for all the language experts out there, a voiced consonant or vowel is a sound that has a vibration in your throat when you say it. So when you say live or amaze, you can, at least theoretically, feel your throat vibrate. Try this with me. Live, amaze, fine. Great. We'll talk about unvoiced sounds later. So for these words, we add a d sound. Live, lived. Why don't you repeat these with me? Live, lived. Advise, advised. Drain, drained. Travel, traveled. Remember, remembered. Rhyme, rhymed. Nudge, nudged. Breathe, breathed. Great. Next, let's look at the t sound. When we have unvoiced consonants, we end with t. Unvoiced sounds do not have a vibration in your throat. Help, laugh, miss. No vibration. Again, don't worry too much about this, but that is the technical explanation. So for these words, we add a t sound at the end. Help, helped. Why don't you repeat with me? Clap, clapped. Walk, walked. Dance, danced. Ask, asked. Watch, watched. Thank, thanked. Great. Finally, we have root words ending with T or D. If your root word ends in T or D, you will add an id sound. And this is very important. You add an extra syllable. Need becomes needed. Want, wanted. Decide, decided. Attend, attended. So notice the difference. With the two other types, there is no extra syllable. Help, helped. Live, lived. But notice this. Need, needed. Needed. That's 2 syllables. Great. Wonderful. Now, I know what's happening. You're thinking, great, I understand. Thank you, Mark, and thank you, E2. But no, it's not over. You understand, but I don't want you to understand. I want you to never get it wrong again. And for this to happen, you must internalize the grammar. So, let's practice. Repeat after me. Yesterday, I walked home from work. Yesterday, I walked home from work. When I was younger, I lived in Vancouver. When I was younger, I lived in Vancouver. I attended university in England. I attended university in England. I laughed so hard during the movie. I laughed so hard during the movie. I asked my parents how they met. I asked my parents how they met. I watched a movie last night. I watched a movie last night. Great. Now, an even better way to do this is to tell a longer story about yourself. I'll tell you a story about me, but it is going to use both regular and irregular past simple. When you're finished listening, you should write your own story and use it to practice. A few years ago, I traveled back to Canada and visited my friends and family. It was a long flight because we stopped in China on the way home. We waited in the airport for 5 hours. My wife slept, but I couldn't. When we arrived in Vancouver, my wife was amazed. She loved the mountains and the forests. We hiked, we walked along the beach, and we checked out many of the city's historical sites. We also spent time with my family. when it was over, we were sad that it ended. Okay, so how about you? Have you got a story to tell? I'm sure you do. Write it down. Use a mix of past simple regular and irregular verbs, and then practice. Practice, practice, practice until the muscles in your mouth learn to add the d, t, or id sounds. Also, don't go too quickly. It's a great idea to practice it slow, and then as you get more familiar with the sounds and the muscles involved, practice a bit faster. Just a bit. I hope you enjoyed learning a fun and awesome way to improve your past simple pronunciation. And if you ever want a bit more practice before your English test, make sure you head to www.e2testprep.com and sign up for one of our free online English test prep courses for IELTS, PTE, OET, TOEFL, TOEIC, and CELPIP.